Friends, the entire movie is divided into 3 chapters, so I'll explain it chapter-wise to make it easier for you to understand. The movie begins with a man narrating a story. He tells us that centuries ago, there was a goddess named Porti, Fulfillment, who had an endless supply of grain and gold. According to legend, when the universe was created, the goddess Porti gave birth to 160 million deities from her womb. Among them, her eldest child, Hastar, was also her most beloved. Over time, greed and arrogance took over Hastar, and one day, he tried to steal his mother's gold. He succeeded but was stopped by other deities when he tried to take the grain. They destroyed him, reducing him to dust. Some deities feared that Hastar, being so powerful, might one day regain his strength and return. So, they decided to destroy him completely. Just as they were about to deliver the final blow, the goddess Porti saved him. However, she knew Hastar had a demonic nature, so she gave him life on one condition: no human would ever worship him, and no book or scripture would ever mention him. Many ages passed, and Hastar slept quietly in his mother's lap. But in the future, we see that some people from the village of Tumbad built a temple for Hastar and started worshipping him. This angered the other deities, and their wrath rained down on the village in the form of continuous rain. At the end of the story, we hear that Hastar's curse is a blessing for us, and this line is repeated multiple times in the movie, so remember it. After this, the first chapter of the movie begins. We are taken to the year 1918 in a remote village in Maharashtra called Tumbad. The movie shows a woman named Jyoti, who lives with her 2 sons, Vinayak and Sadashiv, and her elderly mother-in-law. Jyoti goes to the village head, known as Sarkar, during heavy rain. The villagers refer to the head's mansion as Sarkar's Wada, and address him as Sarkar. We see that Jyoti often visits Sarkar to please him, and in return, he gives her money to raise her children. However, her real motive is to obtain a gold coin held by a statue in Sarkar's house. Sarkar notices this and warns Jyoti not to look at the coin, as it isn't easily obtained. It must be earned. The scene then shifts to Jyoti's 2 sons, Vinayak and Sadashiv, who are impatiently waiting for their mother. They know she goes to Sarkar's house every day to work, but today she is late. The brothers discuss what to do about their grandmother's meal. Here, I should clarify that the grandmother is not actually Jyoti's mother-in-law. The brothers call her Dadi, grandmother, but she is actually Sarkar's mistress, whom he left at Jyoti's house for care and feeding. So, her age is hard to guess, and it's a mystery how she is still alive. She is so old that her skin has completely decayed, and she is kept locked in a room all day, chained. Vinayak prepares food for her but, out of fear, sends his younger brother, Sadashiv, to give it to her. As Sadashiv approaches her room, Jyoti arrives and scolds Vinayak for sending his brother. Jyoti then prepares the food herself and takes it to the grandmother. This is the first time we see the grandmother, and her appearance is terrifying. Later that night, Vinayak and Jyoti talk. Vinayak asks if she got the gold coin, and Jyoti angrily replies that it isn't easily obtained, it must be earned. Suddenly, the grandmother wakes up and demands food again. Jyoti quickly takes food to her, but the grandmother mutters in a scary voice that she doesn't want food and wants to be set free. Hearing this, Jyoti trembles and tells her to sleep, or Hastar will come. Upon hearing this, the grandmother falls into a deep sleep. The next day, Jyoti learns that Sarkar has died. After his funeral, she tells her children that they will leave for Pune the next day, as there is nothing left for them in the village. However, Vinayak insists that there is a hidden treasure in the mansion and suggests they search for it. Jyoti dismisses the idea, saying that Sarkar's entire lineage has died without finding the treasure. But Vinayak argues that the grandmother, being the oldest member of the family, must know about the treasure. Jyoti, lacking the courage to ask the grandmother, tells Vinayak to go ahead if he dares. Meanwhile, Sadashiv falls from a tree branch and suffers a severe head injury. Jyoti rushes him to the doctor, leaving Vinayak at home. She instructs Vinayak to feed the grandmother and warns him that if she screams or scares him, he should say, "Sleep," or Hastar will come, and she will immediately fall asleep. Jyoti leaves, and soon the grandmother starts screaming for food. Vinayak, who doesn't know how to cook, tries to prepare something but ends up spilling flour all over himself. Hearing the grandmother's cries, he goes to her. The grandmother repeatedly asks if he wants the treasure, and Vinayak, driven by greed, approaches her. She tells him about Sarkar's treasure, but before she can say more, she attacks him, saying she will eat his flesh. Vinayak tries to remember his mother's words but, out of fear, forgets them. He says, "Sleep, or the serpent will come," and then, "Sleep, or the demon will come," but he can't recall the correct words. The grandmother laughs and mocks him, saying he forgot the name. Just as she is about to kill him, Vinayak remembers and shouts, "Sleep, or Hastar will come." Hearing this, the grandmother immediately falls asleep. Meanwhile, Sadashiv dies before reaching the doctor, and Jyoti returns home alone. Seeing her alone, Vinayak asks about Sadashiv, and Jyoti tells him that Sadashiv is no longer in this world and that they will leave the village the next morning. As planned, they leave the village the next day by boat. On the way, Vinayak tells Jyoti that she spent her whole life serving Sarkar but got nothing in return. He claims that he and Sadashiv are Sarkar's sons, so he has a right to the mansion and the treasure hidden within. Hearing this, Jyoti slaps him and scolds him for thinking about the treasure right after his brother's death. She gives him a gold coin and tells him not to speak of it again. But Vinayak insists that the grandmother knows about the treasure and suggests they stop feeding her so that she will reveal the secret out of hunger. Realizing the extent of Vinayak's greed, Jyoti makes him swear never to return to Tumbad. Vinayak reluctantly agrees, and the first chapter ends. The second chapter begins 15 years later, in 1933. Vinayak is now grown up and married but, breaking his promise to his mother, returns to Tumbad, still driven by his greed for the treasure. He goes to his old house, knowing that only the grandmother can lead him to the treasure. However, upon arriving, he finds that a large tree has grown through the grandmother's chest. Despite not eating or drinking, she is still alive, with her heart beating outside her body, while the rest of her body has merged with the soil. Vinayak asks her why she wasn't made a sati, a widow who immolates herself on her husband's funeral pyre, after her husband's death. She replies that she was the only one in the family who could descend and ascend the well quickly. So the family needed her. Vinayak deduces that the treasure must be in the well, but the grandmother warns him against greed, saying that not everything inherited is meant to be claimed. She tells him that the curse ended with her and urges him not to restart it. Vinayak insists that if he doesn't claim the treasure, someone else will, and they will keep it all for themselves. The grandmother, seeking liberation, agrees to tell him the way to the treasure in exchange for her freedom. She reveals that the treasure is in a well inside Sarkar's mansion. Vinayak spends 3 months searching for the well and finally finds it, along with a way to descend into it. However, he still doesn't know how to retrieve the treasure from the well. He returns to the grandmother, who tells him the secret. Fulfilling his promise, Vinayak burns her, freeing her from the curse. He then descends into the well, digs a tunnel, and after several months, finds a box. Following the grandmother's instructions, he obtains a gold coin and returns to his village. Back in the village, he finds that his wife has started a small flour mill to make ends meet. Angry, Vinayak tells her that their days are about to change, as they will soon have a lot of money. The next day, Vinayak visits his moneylender, Raghav, to whom he owes a significant amount of money. He shows Raghav the gold coin, and Raghav estimates its value to be around 1 Indian rupee. Vinayak uses the coin to repay his debt and receive some change. He then tells Raghav that he has 3 more such coins and asks if Raghav would like to buy them. Raghav agrees, and Vinayak's fortunes begin to change. He repeatedly visits Tumbad to retrieve more gold coins, sometimes bringing back as many as 10 coins, while other times only 2. Raghav grows suspicious and asks Vinayak where he is getting the coins, wondering if they are stolen. Vinayak dismisses his concerns, saying it's none of his business and that the gold is ancestral. Over time, Vinayak becomes wealthy, and people start to wonder how he acquired so much money. One day, Raghav meets a policeman named Kapoor, who tells him that if his transfer hadn't been delayed, he would have helped Raghav with his office personal management request. Realizing that Kapoor's transfer is imminent, Raghav approaches Vinayak and suggests they become partners to reduce the risk and manage the money better. Vinayak refuses, saying he can handle his own affairs. As time passes, Raghav learns from Vinayak's wife that Vinayak frequently visits Tumbad and suspects that there is a treasure there. He decides to stop Vinayak from going to Tumbad and tries to retrieve the treasure himself. He hires a prostitute to distract Vinayak for 2 days, during which he plans to go to Tumbad and steal the treasure. However, Vinayak outsmarts Raghav by revealing his plans and intentionally leading him to the well. Raghav watches as Vinayak descends into the well and returns with gold coins. Convinced that the treasure is in the well, Raghav descends into it and finds a large iron box with an image of the goddess Porti on it. He opens the box, expecting to find treasure, but instead finds a rope leading deep into the well. He follows the rope and discovers that he is inside the womb of the goddess Porti, where the walls are deep red, and it feels as if the place is breathing. He finds a small box and rubs it, hoping to find treasure, but instead finds a doll made of flour. Confused, he takes the doll out, and the smell of grain attracts Hastar, who kills Raghav. Meanwhile, Vinayak is seen quietly making flour dolls. He descends into the well and finds Raghav in the same state as the grandmother. Unable to bear seeing Raghav suffer, Vinayak tells him to sleep, or Hastar will come, and Raghav falls asleep. Vinayak then reveals the method he uses to retrieve the gold coins. He creates a protective circle with flour, takes a flour doll in his hand, and summons Hastar. Hastar tries to take the doll but cannot cross the flour circle. Vinayak throws the doll in another direction, and as Hastar goes to eat it, Vinayak opens the pouch on Hastar's waist, causing gold coins to spill out. He quickly collects some coins and climbs out of the well before Hastar can finish the doll. Before leaving, he burns Raghav to free him from the curse. The movie then revisits the line mentioned at the beginning, Hastar's curse is a blessing for us. This is because anyone who comes into contact with Hastar becomes immortal. But their body decays over time. While immortality and knowledge of the treasure's location seem like blessings, the decaying body makes it a curse. The second chapter ends here. The third chapter begins in 1947. Vinayak now has 3 children, twin daughters and a son named Pandurang, who has polio. Despite his condition, Vinayak trains Pandurang to descend into the well and retrieve gold coins. Pandurang practices daily, counting the number of coins he retrieves and the time it takes. Meanwhile, the prostitute Raghav had brought years ago still lives with Vinayak. His wife is aware of this but can't do anything because of the money Vinayak brings home. Over the years, Vinayak stops visiting Tumbad, and the coins at home start to run out. He decides to return to Tumbad, this time with Pandurang. However, there's a new problem: India has gained independence. And the government has taken control of Sarkar's mansion, declaring it state property. Vinayak is worried because, although he is the rightful owner, he has no documents to prove it. If the mansion is taken over by the government, he won't be able to retrieve the coins. Determined to collect as much treasure as possible, Vinayak takes Pandurang with him. On their way to Tumbad, Vinayak asks Pandurang if he would choose a life where he becomes immortal upon touching a deity, knows the secret of the treasure, and only has to eat and sleep. Pandurang says that everyone would want such a life, but Vinayak replies that only those who know it's a curse would refuse. Upon reaching Tumbad, Vinayak teaches Pandurang how to make flour dolls and tells him to add stones to them, as Hastar also eats stones, giving them more time to steal the coins. Pandurang asks who Hastar is, and Vinayak says they will meet him when they descend into the well. They go down, and for the first time, Vinayak doesn't bring any flower dolls, wanting to do a trial run to make it easier for Pandurang. However, Pandurang secretly brings a flower doll, and when Hastar appears, Vinayak is shocked. Hastar chases them, and they barely escape. Back home, Vinayak beats Pandurang for bringing the doll, but Pandurang shows him the coins he managed to steal. Impressed, Vinayak gives Pandurang one of the coins and starts to believe that Pandurang will be able to handle the task in the future. However, Pandurang's greed grows, and he starts to resemble his father. One day, he visits the prostitute and tells her that he will come to her when he grows up, giving her his first gold coin. When Vinayak finds out, he is furious and beats Pandurang. But Pandurang, instead of repenting, suggests that they bring more flower dolls to distract Hastar and steal more coins. Vinayak is stunned by the idea and realizes that it might work. The next day, they return to Tumbad with a large quantity of flour. Before descending into the well, Vinayak creates a large protective circle with flour and brings many flower dolls. However, things go wrong when Pandurang reveals that he has brought multiple dolls, and multiple Hastars appear. Vinayak realizes their mistake and tries to distract the Hastars by throwing dolls in different directions. But the Hastars quickly consume the dolls, leaving them with little time. In a desperate move, Vinayak ties small flower dolls to his body and climbs out of the well, sacrificing himself to save Pandurang. The Hastars follow him and are destroyed as they try to cross the flower circle. Pandurang escapes and closes the box. But Vinayak is cursed, his body decaying rapidly. Before dying, Vinayak gives Pandurang a pouch of coins, telling him that he has become rich. Pandurang, realizing the consequences of his greed, decides to free his father from the curse by burning him. As Vinayak dies, he laughs, happy that Pandurang has overcome the family's curse of greed. The movie ends with Pandurang closing the mansion's doors forever.